Hey, Soul Stories fam. We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Please comment on where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. Music poured through the ballroom like sparkling wine. Crystal glasses clinked. Golden light scattered across faces trained to smile. The partners, investors, city officials, all gathered beneath the massive backdrop that read, Vance Global, 10 years of trust innovation. Edward Vance stood at the center of the stage, tuxedo perfectly tailored, black tie sharp as the horizon before a storm. Camera flashes burst like fireworks. The host invited him to say a few words. He took a step forward, fingers brushing the spot where a ring used to be. The spotlight hit his face, making his eyes seem brighter and colder. "Thank you, Port Haven." His voice was low, steady as a steel ruler. "Thank you to everyone who has placed their trust in Vance Global." A few lines of gratitude, a few polished sentences about achievements. Each word clicked into place like a well-oiled gear. Precise, efficient. Applause rose. The host raised a toast. A glass of champagne was handed to him, a ritual of success. Edward hesitated for a heartbeat, then clinked glasses. Golden bubbles kissed his lips. One sip, just one. But memories are never that thin. A long, piercing beep from a heart monitor split the inside of his skull. The smell of antiseptic cut through the perfume of the room. His father's sunburned hands slipped off the desk, the wrinkled reports tumbling to the floor. Just one more week, his father had said. That week had lasted forever. Edward took another sip to drown the sting. A second glass offered insistently, a third for the sponsor's photo op, a fourth because someone retold his success story and he had to celebrate. Each swallow dropped down his throat like pebbles sinking into a dry well. No ripples, only the deep echo of something breaking. He smiled for every camera. The curve of his lips is perfect, shareholder approved, but behind his temples a pulse pounded against the violin's high note. Then came Serena, rising from some dark corner of memory, her familiar lipstick scent, another man's arm around her waist in the rain-soaked parking lot. "I'm sorry, Edward," she had said, voice clipped. "I can't live beside a shadow." The shadow of his father was left in the office, the shadow of himself. He stepped off stage, cutting through the crowd to the quieter corridor leading to the executive floors. Here the lights dimmed, voices softened. The scent of polished wood and air conditioning murmured together. A waitress passed by, silver tray tilting slightly. Edward grabbed a glass. Didn't care if it was water or wine. His hand trembled. The liquid spilled cold into his palm, sliding over his skin like a thin streak of rain. "Mr. Vance, are you all?" The young woman stopped mid-sentence. He had already turned away. He pushed open the emergency exit. The air outside was sharper, unfiltered. The stairwell folded into harsh, angular shadows. He gripped the rail. The dizziness came, like a wave shoving loose every anchor. No one was there to see a CEO collapse. Good, no one needed to. His knees buckled. Back against the wall, the chill of concrete pressed through his suit. He breathed, one short, one long. Then everything shattered. Applause, the beep of machines, rain, the sound of a woman's heels walking away 2 years ago. His chest tightened. Cold sweat broke out. For one raw second, all he heard was the terrified beating of his own heart, like a child lost in a crowd. "Mr. Vance!" A voice came from above the stairs. The waitress again. Brown eyes, hair tied neatly back, black apron over a white dress. She crouched beside him, the dim light washing over her cheekbones. "Don't call security," Edward managed, breath uneven, as if afraid of being seen. "I didn't call anyone," she said softly. "I just brought water." She knelt, set the tray aside, uncapped the bottle, and handed it to him. Not with a polite bow, but with both hands steady, eyes level. He took it. The water touched his lips. It was truly water, cold and clean. A clear stream slid down his throat. No burn, no bitterness, no ghosts, just water. "Are there cameras here?" he asked, the reflex of a man who ruled an empire, never wanting to be seen weak. "No," she answered, "just me. And you." She paused, then added quietly, and the stares. She matched her breathing to his, silent, patient, never prying. When he tried to stand, she offered her arm. "Lean on me a little." "I won't tell anyone." Edward, who always had people do things for him, realized the difference between being pulled up and being helped up. She didn't pull. She let him find his balance, her hand at his elbow like a temporary promise of steadiness. They walked past the framed awards lining the hallway, through the carpeted silence, until the door to his office opened. Glass walls, walnut panels, dim ceiling light. The familiar smell of ink, paper, and leather seemed to calm the air. She eased him onto the sofa. "Do you need a doctor?" "No," his voice rasped. "Just don't let anyone in." "Then I'll stay until you sleep," she said matter-of-factly. "And when you wake up, there'll be a glass of water, not wine, beside you." He looked at her. "Your name?" "Lila," she replied. "Lila Brooks." "Thank you, Miss Brooks." "It's just what anyone should do," she smiled faintly. Then remembered where she was, the CEO's office. The smile faltered. She poured another glass of water, set it on the table, and drew the curtain slightly to soften the city lights. When she turned back, he had already leaned his head against the sofa, eyes closing. Before leaving, she slipped a small note beneath the glass. "I don't know who you are. I just know that tonight you needed water more than wine." She pulled a chair near the door and sat quietly. The gala downstairs roared on, but up here, there was only the steady breathing of a man who had finally collapsed after standing too tall for too long. Out beyond Port Haven Bay, the distant lighthouse blinked once through the mist. Neither of them saw it. Only the glass of water caught a faint glimmer, like a single spark of hope placed at last in the right spot. Morning light crept through the edge of the curtain, slow and tentative, like someone relearning how to open their eyes after a bad dream. Edward woke. His back was damp with cold sweat, throat dry as paper, but the dizziness had eased. In front of him, on the glass table, sat a full glass of water, tiny droplets clinging to the rim like thin mist. At the bottom lay a folded note. He reached for it, just as he noticed, in the corner of the room, a young woman curled up on a chair near the door, head resting on her arm, asleep. Black apron, flat shoes, a few loose strands of hair. Her, the one who had said she'd stay until he fell asleep. The sound of him stirring made her startle. Lila opened her eyes, blinking for a moment before standing abruptly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." She stopped, steadying herself with a hand on her apron. "I'm sorry for staying. I just wasn't sure if I should leave while you were still." "It's all right," Edward interrupted softly, voice hoarse but calm. "Thank you for the water." She nodded, a brief smile flickering like sunlight on water. "I thought you needed it more than anything else last night." He unfolded the note. The handwriting was neat, round, and clear. "I don't know who you are. I just know that tonight you needed water more than wine." So simple it was almost clumsy, yet something inside him loosened. He looked at her again, not to assess, but to recognize. There was something in her eyes, the steadiness of someone who had known loss. "You stayed here all night?" he asked. "Not exactly," she waved her hand. "I checked the hallway from time to time, made sure no one was on this floor. I kept my phone on silent." Her gaze dropped, a little embarrassed. "I know it was beyond my authority. I just didn't want people finding you on the stairs this morning." "You weren't afraid of being misunderstood?" Edward heard the old tone in his voice, cool, guarded. "Of course I was," Lila replied plainly, "but I was more afraid of something else." She looked at the glass of water. "I was afraid there'd be one more person who dies because of alcohol." The words hit the floor softly but heavy. Edward set the note down, lifted his eyes. "Your husband?" She nodded, not avoiding his gaze. "After my daughter was born, some friends took him out for drinks. Just one night of celebration. No one thought it would be the last." Her fingers tightened on her apron. "I don't hate alcohol. I just hate how people use it to shut pain up." Edward's eyes drifted to the framed photo of his father on the shelf. That same smile, the one forever trapped in the picture. He swallowed. "Not everyone would Do what you did, he said slowly. Most would have called my assistant, or security. Maybe because they know who you are, she said with a half smile. I didn't. I just saw someone who needed to sit down and drink some water. In all his years, Edward had heard every kind of word: praise, criticism, proposals, flattery. No one had ever said that to him. He stared at the rings of condensation left on the table. Perfect circles, like the marks time leaves behind. Your name is Lila, right? Yes, Lila Brooks. You work for the event company? Yes, Tonight and Company. They sent me up here because we were short-staffed. She smiled faintly. I always end up doing things that aren't in my job description. He let out a short sound, half laugh, half breath, proof that the muscles around his mouth still worked. Brooks, he repeated as if filing it away. I owe you a proper thank you. And an apology for... He gestured vaguely toward the imaginary staircase. Keeping you awake. It's fine. She stepped back slightly, reclaiming professional distance. I should go before your staff comes in. I'll make sure the hallway's clear. No one needs to know. Edward stopped her. Wait. He reached for his fountain pen and scribbled a few words on a business card. If anyone gives you trouble because of last night, show this to your manager, or to me. He slid the card across the table. And, if you ever need anything, call. Lila looked at the card, then at him. Her eyes met his. Calm, unflinching, neither sharp nor soft, just honest. I don't need anything. I just hope you... She tapped a finger against the glass. Choose this one more often. Not the other glass, he finished, a quiet smile touching the corner of his mouth. Not the other glass, as she echoed. She turned toward the door, hand on the handle, then paused. Oh, one more thing. The water next to you is from last night. I poured a fresh glass. She tilted her head, almost shy. Have a peaceful morning, Mr. Vance. The door opened. The faint hum of office chatter and the smell of morning coffee drifted in. Then she was gone. Edward stayed where he was, listening to that sound fade, slowly like the last period of a long sentence. Monday morning. The glass elevator of Vance Global glided upward like a silver arrow. Lila stood in the corner, clutching a stack of onboarding files to her chest. Her white blouse was simple, her hair tied back with a plain black band. Each floor that slid past brought a streak of bright light. At the 42nd floor, the doors opened. Walnut floors, glass walls overlooking Port Haven Bay. Clouds stretched thin like scarves over the water. Welcome, Brooks. Maya, the floor's coordination assistant, greeted her with a professional smile. 3-month contract. Your access code's in the email. Your desk's outside the CEO's office. Thank you, Lila said, taking a steady breath. Her heartbeat leveled. It was just a job. Just desks, timelines, and emails. But when she walked past the large glass wall, etched with the Vance Global logo, a flicker of memory returned. The emergency stairwell, the cold concrete, the exhausted gray eyes of a man the whole city called untouchable. She blinked, filing that memory back into its drawer and locking it tight. The CEO's door opened softly. Ethan Vance stepped out. Dark navy suit, ash gray tie, morning light cutting a fine line along his cheekbone. Good morning. His voice wasn't loud, yet it carried the kind of quiet authority that made the whole space still for a second. Lila straightened. Good morning, Mr. Vance. She hadn't prepared for this moment, the one where two gazes that once met in the dark now met under office light. A brief pause, then both seemed to remember their roles at the same time. Maya handled the formalities quickly. This is Lila Brooks, temporary administrative assistant. She'll be handling general email routing, meeting room scheduling, interdepartmental minutes, and KPI on-call tracking. Ethan nodded, his eyes flicking briefly toward a corner of his office, where a child's crayon drawing of a smiling face was pinned to the board. He smoothed his cuff and said, "A pleasure, Miss Brooks. I look forward to efficient collaboration." "Yes, sir," Lila replied, her tone steady, betraying none of the small tremor she felt under her ribs. The morning unfolded in a rhythm of keyboard clicks, meeting chimes, and reply threads. CC, BBC, forward. Lila worked neatly. Her desktop folders were aligned like drawers in a filing cabinet. She kept a habit, always placing a glass of water in the corner of her desk and replacing it every 2 hours. Each time it touched the table, it made a faint sound, like a punctuation mark too soft to hear. At 10:15, the intercom buzzed. "Meeting room A. Emergency meeting with product and legal," Maya announced. "Brooks, bring the minutes." Lila stepped in, air thick, voices tense. On the screen, a viral social post was spreading fast. A famous influencer accused Vance Global's investment app of promoting reckless risk. The clip was an edited segment from a training video, taken entirely out of context. The head of legal adjusted her glasses. "We'll demand removal within 24 hours. The head of product snapped, "Too late. It's viral already." Ethan listened silently, his fingers opening and closing his pen in rhythm. "Do we have the revised onboarding video ready?" "A draft, but not approved," product said. "We can't release an unapproved version," legal cut in. Arguments clashed like opposing waves. Lila took notes in shorthand, eyes darting between points. One word stuck in her mind: context. She remembered the spike in views on Soul Stories, a storytelling channel she used to follow, caused by one misunderstood line. People didn't wait for legal statements. They wanted clarity now. "I might suggest a framework," she said hesitantly. The room turned toward her. She set her pen down. Her voice stayed even. "If we only say the video was edited, people will think we're making excuses. But if, within the next 2 hours, we post a calm video from the CEO, acknowledging that the old clip can be misunderstood when taken out of sequence, and announce that the revised onboarding will go live in 72 hours with third-party advisors, viewers will have space to cool down. Add a live Q&A channel for the next 24 hours. "You are," product squinted. "Administrative assistant," Lila answered, unfazed. "I used to handle content and community management for a small fund." The room fell silent for a second. Ethan tilted his head slightly, eyes resting on her longer than usual. "Video framework?" he asked. "Focus on the process, contextualize the full onboarding flow. Address the misunderstanding directly. Say that the cut clip can look like we encourage risk and clarify that we don't." She spoke evenly, each phrase like a step laid on firm ground. "This isn't about assigning blame. It's about owning the impact." Legal hesitated, then nodded. "With that tone, I can approve it." Product exhaled. "If the CEO can be on camera in 2 hours..." "I will," Ethan said without pause. "Brooks, stay after the meeting. We'll work on the script. 2.5 minutes. Lila's eyes flickered, then steadied. "Yes, sir." What followed was precision, like a clockwork machine coming alive. Lila drafted the outline, inserting verbs such as acknowledge, explain, and commit. Legal softened phrasing. Ethan read it aloud once, lowering his tone at the trust points, lifting slightly at reassurance. The camera was set up in his office, lighting soft. Before the first take, Lila handed him a glass of water. Ethan accepted it, the faintest smile touching his face. "Thank you." 2 hours later, the video went live. Beneath it, the flood of angry comments slowed, like a curve losing its slope. The algorithm's graph, usually so mechanical, looked for once like a steady breath. By late afternoon, as the team dispersed, Ethan stood by the window overlooking the bay. Reflected in the glass was a man who had just said, "I take responsibility," before millions. Reflected behind him was a woman organizing the meeting calendar, occasionally turning her water glass exactly 45 degrees, a quiet, habitual motion. "Brooke," he said. "Yes, sir?" "Thank you for this morning," he said, pausing to add, "and for the video framework." "It was just a narrative line," she shrugged lightly. "People calm down when they hear the full sentence." "I suppose they do," Ethan murmured. "One more thing," she added. "The live Q&A channel is overloaded. I've sorted the questions into 4 color-coded categories. You only need to answer Group A, the ones that need a CEO voice. Groups B and C, I'll coordinate with the teams. Proceed." As Lila returned to her desk, Ethan glanced at Ellie's crayon drawing pinned to his board. Crooked smile, uneven yellow strokes. He realized he'd just smiled himself, barely but undeniably. At Lila's desk, her glass of water was half empty. Outside, the midday lighthouse didn't blink, But on the dashboard screen, one jagged chart had finally evened out. Port Haven was breathing again, and on the 42nd floor, two people were quietly learning to speak to each other through short, steady sentences that said just enough. The Vance Global Family Day that year was held on the 15th floor rooftop garden, an open space lined with low lavender beds and white string lights hanging like stars at eye level. Game booths stood in neat rows, and the air smelled of roasted corn mixed with the damp grass from last night's rain. Lila arrived early to help with check-in, wearing a blue fabric wristband that marked her as staff. Ellie held her mother's hand, her wide eyes shimmering like two drops of water resting on a leaf. "Can I play ring toss, Mommy?" Ellie looked up. "You can, but lunch first." Lila pinched her daughter's nose, her smile easier than on any workday. From a distance, Edward arrived with Maya and a few department heads. He wasn't the type to enjoy family events, the kind where things that couldn't be measured by KPIs tended to appear vividly. But as soon as he stepped in, he saw yellow. Not the yellow of stock shares or a watch, sunlight scattered in dots across a little girl's hair. Ellie's. She was hopping on one foot, arms flailing for balance, the corner of one sneaker peeling loose. "Look, it's Mr. Edward," Ellie murmured to herself, naturally as if naming a storybook character. Then she hesitated and looked at her mother. "Good afternoon, Mr. Vance." Lila spoke first, her tone professional. Yet her eyes, before the curtain of composure fell, softened for a heartbeat. "Happy company day." "Hey, Ellie," Edward nodded, letting just enough of a smile show. "Your shoes are about to fall apart." Ellie glanced down at her toes and grinned sheepishly. "I jumped too hard." "Then you need a bit of tape," Edward said, as if it were something he did every day. He called to Maya, "Got any duct tape?" A few minutes later, the sneakers were patched up. "Now they'll hold steady," he said. Ellie looked up. "Thank you, mister." She tilted her head, studying his face, then declared, "You should smile." Edward froze for half a second. It felt like stepping out of an operating room for the first time, unsure if anyone was still waiting in the hall. He let the corner of his mouth lift a little. "Better?" "Not yet." A bit more. Ellie pressed two fingers to her own cheeks, stretching them, then giggled. The second time, he really smiled. A faint crease appeared at his eye. Lila stood by, her smile slipping quietly into her gaze, saying nothing. Throughout lunch, Edward kept a measured distance, watching Lila and her daughter. The way Lila knelt to meet her child's eyes when explaining the rules. The way she counted softly so Ellie could time her throws. The calm way she let the girl lose and learn to lose. Nothing dramatic. Yet it was precisely that absence of drama that pulled him out of the kind of storm he thought he'd grown used to living in. "Would you like to try the ring toss, sir?" someone asked. "Later," he replied, his eyes still resting on the swing of Ellie's braid. When the sun began to soften, Lila led Ellie to the refreshment booth. The girl chose lemonade, Lila plain water. Edward didn't know why his feet moved toward them, like an unseen string stretched taut between the three of them, tugging gently. "Ms. Brooks," he said. "Yes, sir?" Lila turned. He looked at the cup in her hand, words leaving his mouth before his mind could edit them. "May I buy you a coffee?" "Not now. Sometime convenient." The silence between them was as thin as the surface of a lake before a pebble drops. Ellie was busy with her straw, oblivious. Lila met his gaze, steady, unflinching, then shook her head slightly. "Thank you, but that's not necessary." Edward couldn't hide the flicker of surprise. People rarely said no to his invitations, especially when they might come with some unspoken opportunity. Straightening his back, he kept his tone even. "I only wanted to thank you for—" "You don't need to thank me," she said softly, as if placing a leaf upon water. "Just smile for yourself." She lifted her cup slightly between them, a quiet toast. "Like you did earlier." This time, Edward didn't react with executive logic. He pressed his lips together, exhaled through his nose, and let a small, genuine smile surface. For himself, not for shareholders or cameras. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll try." "That's enough," Lila replied. She bent to wipe a drop of lemonade from Ellie's chin. "What do you want to play next, honey?" "Ring toss again!" Ellie cheered. Edward stepped back half a pace, keeping the respectful distance. Have fun, you two. The sky, as if on cue, drew a soft shade of cloud over the garden. The string lights weren't yet on, but the air had cooled enough for the lavender leaves to tremble lightly. Lila took her daughter's hand and walked toward the games, her dress brushing the edge of sunlight. Edward stood still, watching. No perfect line of dialogue came. None was needed. Maya approached. Do you want to head down for the sponsor signing now? In a minute, Edward said. Hands clasped behind his back, his eyes stayed on the woman tying her child's shoelaces, then looking up with a smile. So simple it was frightening. So intricate it was enviable. At that moment he realized some walls don't need hammers to break. They lower themselves when they see peace and no longer want to stand outside it. By late afternoon, the event ended. Lila guided Ellie toward the elevator. As the doors began to close, Edward instinctively quickened his pace, placing a hand between them. Miss Brooks. Lila looked up. Tomorrow, we have the PR meeting at 9. If you're free, stay for 10 minutes after. I'd like to hear more about your question sorting method from last time. Of course, she nodded. Have a good evening. The doors shut. In the reflection of the glass elevator, for a fleeting second, Lila's arm around Ellie's shoulders, the girl resting her head, half a cup of lemonade left. Outside, Edward saw his own face in the mirrored surface. No longer as cold as it had been that morning. He touched his jacket pocket, feeling the flat edge of a business card. Somewhere deeper than fabric, something else shifted, a layer of long frozen ice beginning to thaw. Quietly. Saturday morning. The 42nd floor was quieter than usual. The printer slept, and the hallway lights were half off. Lila had come by to pick up a report, bringing Ellie along because the neighbor who usually watched her was busy. The little girl hopped across the carpet in frog jumps, each thud soft enough to make the glassy silence of the office seem less severe. Remember, quiet, Lila whispered. I know, Ellie whispered back, then too dramatically added, Mom, this place smells like new paper. Edward was reviewing his schedule for the week when he heard the small footsteps. He looked up. Lila stood in the doorway, knocking lightly. Sorry, I just came to grab the proposal for Monday's presentation. Ellie's with me, but I'll be quick. It's fine, Edward said, his voice unconsciously softer, as though afraid to disturb the calm. Hello, Ellie. The girl stared at him, open and direct, as if watching a statue suddenly blink. Mr. Edward looks sad. Ellie, Layla flushed. It's all right, Edward said, smiling despite himself, a fleeting curve that barely stayed. Why do you think that? Because you look like Mommy when she looks at Dad's picture, Ellie said simply. Mom's eyes look like the sky without the sun. She tilted her head. But when Mom smiles, it's warm. You should try smiling. I think you'd look more handsome. For a moment, Edward felt something small tug at his chest. Really? He straightened his tie, pretending to be serious. Like this? Ellie shook her head solemnly, a fair little judge. No, you're only smiling with your mouth, not with your eyes. Lila wanted to sink through the carpet. I'm so sorry, Mr. Vance. Edward lifted a hand. Let her finish. He crouched down to her level, forgetting for once about appearances. Then show me. How do I smile with my eyes? Okay. Ellie pulled a small notebook and a box of crayons from her backpack. I'll draw you smiling. You just look. The crayons scratched the paper in shaky lines, an oval face, 2 curved eyes, a wide, bright grin. She shaded yellow all around and said that was sunlight. Lila stood nearby, her heart softening at her daughter's total focus. All done. Ellie held up the drawing. This is you when you smile. You should put it on your wall so you don't forget. Edward took the paper. It was light as air, but somehow heavy, like a promise. He looked at the drawn crescent eyes and felt a natural smile rise to his lips. So real it startled even him. Thank you, Ellie. Maya arrived just then and stopped in her tracks, the CEO holding a crayon drawing, a small girl watching him intently, and Lila looking mortified. Maya bit back a gasp. Edward glanced at the planning board, rows of timelines, budgets, and KPIs. He took a gold push pin and pinned Ellie's drawing right in the middle. slightly to the right, the spot usually marked top priority. In that instant, the entire office seemed to change temperature. A patch of yellow appeared among the blue-gray lines of corporate logic. Maya captured the scene in her memory rather than on her phone. Some moments were better kept as secrets between witnesses. By noon, Lila packed up her files. "Thank you for not minding about Ellie," she said quietly. "Not at all," Edward replied. "Actually, she made my workday easier." Ellie swung her backpack and asked suddenly, "Are you busy this afternoon?" "Ellie," Lila warned, "I'm just asking." She winked at Edward like a tiny conspirator. "We're going to the Bay Park. There are ducks. Do you like ducks?" Edward almost laughed. His calendar, overlapping boxes of meetings, approvals, investor calls, loomed in his mind. That afternoon, he had to sign off on contracts and join a European call. But the question, "Do you like ducks?" turned every word like deal, term sheet, and ROI into the sound of waves far away. He glanced at the yellow drawing on the board, then back at Ellie. "I can make 30 minutes. 30? Ellie frowned in mock calculation. 30 minutes isn't much for ducks, but okay. The Port Haven Bay Park spread out like an open palm of green. Children ran barefoot through the grass. The wind brushed the birch trees and the air smelled of salt and cut grass. Lila sat on a wooden bench, bag beside her, eyes following her daughter. Edward stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, keeping a polite distance. "Thank you for coming," Lila said. "I know your schedule isn't exactly breathable." "My schedule needs to learn how to breathe," he said, surprised at his own lightness. Ellie carried a bag of breadcrumbs to the water's edge. "Mom, I tore them small," she called, scattering bits into the bay. Ducks paddled over, leaving silver ripples behind. Edward watched the circles widen. A gray duck with a white patch on its neck stretched out to steal an extra piece. "Don't push," Ellie scolded. Whether the duck understood was unclear, but it soon settled and Ellie nodded, pleased with her success as an educator. "Mr. Edward," she said suddenly, "you should smile at the ducks." "Do ducks need me to smile?" he asked. "Yes, ducks know who's kind. When people smile, ducks swim closer." Her tone was that of a serious biologist. Edward smiled, awkwardly. Sure enough, the gray duck drifted nearer, tilting its head up at him. "See?" Ellie whispered triumphantly. "The duck likes you. Or maybe it likes your bread." "Both," she declared. They walked along the waterfront path. Lila told a few small stories. The flickering stove light, the new anthurium she'd bought, the alphabet Ellie was learning. Edward, for the first time, told her something about his father. "He taught me never to make anyone wait. The day he died, I was 17 minutes late. He'd forgive you," Lila said gently. "Parents always do." Edward said nothing, but his hand in his pocket tightened, then loosened. A little boy nearby tripped and fell. Lila instinctively rose, then paused as the boy's mother rushed in. She sat back down with a quiet smile. "Sometimes," she said, "you just need to be nearby. You don't always have to save." Edward looked at her profile, sunlight brushing her cheekbone in a pale arc. Without meaning to, he said, "Thank you for the drawing." "It's Ellie's," Lila corrected, then added softly. "But yes, thank you for hanging it up. She'll brag all week." "The whole company will talk about it all week," he said with a half smile. "Good for them." "Why's that?" "Because it'll remind them we're human," he said, eyes following the ducks. "Not just KPIS." When the sun dipped low, they stopped by a balloon cart. Ellie hugged a star-shaped balloon, beaming so much she forgot she'd wanted ice cream. Before they parted, she tiptoed and whispered to Edward, "Don't forget to smile." "I'll try," he said, then added honestly, "because I want to look more handsome." Ellie burst out laughing. Lila did too. And in the soft evening wind, their laughter rippled out like rings on water, small, lasting, leaving behind a shimmer no one else could quite see. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us at Soul Stories, where tens of thousands of listeners and sharers come together. On Wednesday morning, Lila arrived earlier than usual to hand off her work. Her eyes were shadowed with fatigue. "Maya, I need to take 2 days off," she said quickly. "My mother was admitted to the hospital last night. The doctors are keeping her for heart monitoring. Oh my, Maya lowered her voice. Do you want me to tell HR to handle the paperwork for you? That would be great. Lila thanked her, sliding over a neatly sorted stack of files. Meeting schedules, pending emails, question lists. Her hands moved out of habit, setting the glass of water at its usual corner of the desk. But her mind was already in the ICU, where her mother lay still under white lights. Edward arrived 2 minutes late and immediately noticed the exhaustion in Lila's eyes. What happened? My mother's in the hospital, she said steadily. I've handed everything over. If you'll excuse me. Go, he said at once. HR will prioritize the paperwork. Lila nodded, clutching her bag as she ran. The elevator doors closed, her shrinking reflection punctuating the hallway like the end of a rushed sentence. At 11:40, HR sent an update. Emergency Support Fund approved 50% under policy cap, applicable to temporary staff. The excess portion has no current funding source. Edward read the email twice. The process was sound. Limits, criteria, fairness. But the excess portion was still a missing step on the staircase. He wanted to help, but if he offered the money directly, she would refuse. She would see it as pity. He dialed accounting. Prepare a no-interest employee welfare loan for temporary staff. Beneficiary, Lila Brooks. The funds come from my personal advance, but I process them through the company for transparency. HR will draft the repayment agreement. Lila chooses the term, no interest, no prepayment penalty. The voice on the other end hesitated. Should we include your name in the internal record, sir? In the ledger, note it as a personal advance for audit clarity. On the employee's contract, label it Vance Global, Employee Welfare Loan Program. No need to mention my name. Follow the procedure. Understood, sir. Edward hung up. On his corkboard, a crayon drawing by Ellie, a crooked little smile, glowed like a patch of sunlight among the numbers. That afternoon, Lila rushed back to retrieve her private insurance papers, which she'd left behind. She hadn't planned to see anyone, but as the elevator doors opened, Edward stood in the lobby. How's your mother? He asked. Better, but they need to monitor her longer, she answered briefly. I just came for some papers. I'll be gone right after. From the corner, Maya hurried over with a file. Brooks, the fund's 50% has been transferred directly to the hospital. For the rest, HR issued a no-interest welfare loan contract. Please review and sign. The payment also goes straight to the hospital, so you won't have to handle it. Lila froze. Her eyes shifted sharply to Edward. You approve this? Edward kept his tone even. The fund followed its policy cap. For the remaining portion, the company issued a welfare loan, no interest, to be repaid in installments. Everything is processed through the system. Company funds or yours? Lila asked, her voice dropping, a defensive reflex. My personal advance, but routed through the company, Edward clarified. The contract is between you and Vance Global. No personal obligation between you and me. You choose the term, schedule, or early repayment if you wish. Lila gripped the edge of the file. Pride bristled inside her, a reflex honed by years of standing on her own. Why? You pity me? No. Edward met her eyes. If I wanted to pity you, I'd have sent flowers and empty words. I didn't. I used the right tool for the right case, to bridge the missing step. He paused. You make me want to do what's right, not what's grand. The fund covers its share. The rest, a small, transparent, no-interest loan, lets you stay in control, owing no one personally. The phrase, owing no one personally, stopped Lila cold. In her mind, the ICU, the beeping monitor, bills printing like an endless ribbon, a spark of anger at being seen when weak searched for a place to land, but the clear structure of the loan opened another door, a way to accept help without surrendering choice. Where's the contract? She asked, her tone softening. Maya handed it over. Suggested terms, 12 to 18 to 24 months. No interest, no prepayment fee. If you'd like a shorter term, tick this box. Payments go through the hospital, no cash handling. Lila flipped through it quickly. The clauses were clear, the fine print honest. At the bottom, the funding breakdown read, 50% emergency support fund, per policy, 50% employee welfare loan. Personal advance routed through the company. She looked up. Why specify personal advance? For audit transparency, Edward said. And so HR can explain it properly without mentioning my name in connection with you. Something thin and cold inside Lila cracked. I'll repay the entire loan, she said slowly. Not a dollar short. Good, Edward nodded. 18 months then? 12 might be tight. I don't want repayment to become another burden. 18, Lila said, signing. The pen trembled slightly at the last stroke, not from fear, but from the cost of lowering her guard. And thank you. Edward exhaled as if a plank had finally been set in place. One more thing, he said gently. You have the right to be angry. I used to be angry at the world just for making me feel weak. But sometimes, stepping onto a bridge someone builds for you doesn't make you smaller. It just gets you to the other side. The bridge, Lila echoed, glancing toward the glass wall where Ellie's yellow drawing faintly reflected. All right, I'll step on, but I'll walk my own part. I'm only laying the plank, Edward said. You walk. A short silence followed. Maya discreetly stepped away, leaving the two of them with the calm ding of the elevator. Here, Edward handed her a paper bag. Water, soft bread, wet wipes, a spare charger. At hospitals, these things are worth gold. You sound experienced, Lila said, her voice gentler. There were nights I sat there, Edward replied, his gaze brushing the photo of his father on the shelf, and learned to be grateful to anyone who handed me a bottle of water. Lila took the bag, studying him. For the first time, she said his name without a title. Thank you, Edward. I'll pay it back, and you won't have to remind me. As the elevator doors closed, their reflection lingered for a second, Lila standing taller, like someone who had just stepped onto a new board. In his office, Edward brushed his fingers against the drawing, a child's smile among spreadsheets, and realized the bridge between them had gained another span. That night, in the hospital room, Lila opened the bottle from the paper bag and drank. The water had no scent, no sweetness, no promise. It simply passed through her throat and stayed by presence alone. She picked up her phone and texted HR, 18-month term, allow early repayment anytime. Then after a brief pause, she sent one more message to E. Vance, office. I acknowledge the fund. The loan, I'll repay it fully. And thank you for the bridge. On the 42nd floor, Edward's phone lit up in the dark. He didn't reply right away. He opened the balcony door, looking out over the bay. Across the water, the lighthouse blinked steadily, counting like a heartbeat, each plank being laid across the distance people once thought unbridgeable. The rain began late in the afternoon, as if someone had turned on a faucet in the sky and forgotten to shut it. From the 42nd floor, Port Haven looked like a sheet of blurred glass. Headlights stretched into wet threads, and the wind hummed along the building's frame like the strings of a giant instrument. By 7 p.m., the office had emptied out. Maya sent a message over the intercom. Roads flooded, elevator number 3 under maintenance. Anyone still here, wait for security to escort you down. Lila glanced at her phone. Aunt Helen. Ellie's eaten, playing with the fat cat. Don't worry. Lila exhaled, guilt easing a little, though the patter of rain on glass still tightened her chest like a stretched drum. Edward stood by the window, a white ceramic mug in his hands, watching the water race each other down in silver streaks. The hallway lights had shifted to a warm gold. On the planning board, Ellie's crayon drawing, its crooked little smile, floated in a soft halo of light, like a tiny sun pinned inside a sky of numbers. The streets are jammed, he said when Lila's footsteps stopped at the doorway. My driver says it'll be at least an hour before he reaches the garage. Security says elevator 1 still works, but the lower floors are leaking. Lila set her coat on a chair, damp hair clinging slightly at the ends. I'll wait. Ellie's with Aunt Helen. She loves it there, because of the fat cat. Every rainy night needs a fat cat, Edward murmured with a faint smile. And a kettle of hot water. Lila plugged in a small electric pot she always carried, dropped in a few dried mint leaves. The cool scent filled the air, pushing back the smell of damp carpet. She poured a cup and slid it across the table. Here, this'll keep you warm. Edward accepted it, the heat spreading into his palm. Thank you. They sat across from each other at the low table. Outside, thunder didn't roar. It rolled deep, echoing through the glass walls, turning the room, so used to keystrokes and meeting chimes, into something thick, muffled, like a heavy blanket over every motion. Were you ever afraid of thunder? Lila asked casually, as if she'd just asked about the cat. No. Edward watched the rain hit the glass. I'm afraid of the silence after it. Because that's when people can hear themselves, she said, not questioning, just finishing his thought. He nodded, setting down the cup, lips curving with a wry half-smile. Or hear what they've been trying to throw out of their heads. Wind slapped the window. The ceiling light flickered once. Lila turned her cup exactly 45 degrees, a reflex when she needed to steady herself. On nights like this, hospitals are always overcrowded, she said, eyes drifting toward the dim corner. I hate the smell of antiseptic, but I love how people still search for something warm to hold on to. Edward laced his fingers together. My father died in his office, he began, unlocking a drawer long sealed. That night I was 17 minutes late. I remember the number like a street address. I used to think, if I'd been there 17 minutes earlier, I could have dragged him outside, made him take one breath, just one. Lila didn't interrupt with, don't blame yourself. Some sentences collapse when they hit sympathy. She only cupped her mug, letting the warmth seep into her hands. After that, I married Serena, Edward went on. I thought marriage was a bridge that could hold anything. Then on a rainy night, I found her, with someone else in the garage. She said I was a shadow, my father's, my job's, my own. A man who didn't know how to sit still. She left? Leela asked softly. Yeah, I didn't stop her. He gave a thin smile. Not because I was noble, because I didn't know how to keep what was already hollow. His gaze stayed on the rain. I worked more. People called me untouchable. I thought if no one could reach me, I wouldn't hurt. But if no one can reach you, Lila said gently, no one can touch you either. The words slipped neatly into the hollow in his chest. He turned to her. And you're afraid of alcohol. Because one drink took my husband. Lila set her cup down, fingers twining, not from cold. After Ellie was born, some friends took him out to celebrate. He was fine, laughing, said he'd be home soon. Then the hospital called. Stroke. The doctor said arterial anomaly, like he was reading the weather report. She swallowed hard. I only remember the sound of a water bottle rolling across the tile floor. Since that night, I've hated alcohol, not because it's evil, but because people use it to glue cracks that should be stitched. Edward leaned forward slightly, lowering himself so her words wouldn't have to climb. That's why you didn't leave me on the stairs that night? Lila nodded. I didn't want another man left alone in the dark. I called Aunt Helen to watch Ellie and came back. I know it was beyond my authority, but sometimes the only authority that matters is conscience. Edward was silent for a beat, then said quietly, no titles, no armor. I didn't want anyone to see the CEO of Vance Global drunk and collapsed in a hallway. And unfortunately, you did, Lila breathed out, steady. And I didn't leave you. He looked at her, half self-mocking, half grateful. Maybe that's the scariest thing, and the kindest thing that's happened to me in years. The ceiling light flickered once more, then steadied. Rain hammered the skylight like someone scattering seeds. Lila lowered the blinds a little. The room warmed. At the hospital, she said with a small smile, they say putting a hand on someone's shoulder is a basic medical skill. She glanced at him. I only put a hand on your elbow. And I stood up, Edward said, as if signing a confession. He looked toward Ellie's crayon son. She told me to smile at myself. Have you tried? A little, he said, the corner of his mouth curling into a shape he barely recognized. Not bad, actually. They both laughed. A small sound, like a candle's flame sheltered from wind. They stopped talking about the heavy things and drifted into lighter stories. How Ellie counted stars out loud to swallow her medicine. How Edward's basil plants kept dying because he forgot to water them. How Lila's hallway light flickered. How Edward's father's watch always ran 5 minutes fast, so no one would ever be late. Then Maya's message popped up. Road's clear. Security is waiting in the lobby. Lila stood, slipping on her coat. Her hand brushed the edge of Ellie's drawing, like touching a small charm. "I'll walk you down," Edward said, reaching for the black umbrella by the door. "No need, I can—" She stopped mid-sentence, narrowed her eyes playfully. "Fine. I'll let you do something small." The elevator descended. Their reflections on the steel wall stood half a hand's width apart. At the lobby, the guard opened the door. The smell of rain swept in, cool mixed with wet asphalt and leaves. Edward opened the umbrella, tilting it halfway toward her. Outside, the downpour hung like a curtain of strings. They stepped slowly down the marble steps. Lila stopped under the awning, turned to him. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "For just sitting. Not trying to fix me or yourself. Just sitting." "Thank you for tonight," he echoed. "For staying." The wind caught her coat hem. He reached out to steady it, then withdrew his hand, a gesture so small it hadn't yet become intimacy. They both smiled. Headlights swept across the wet street, leaving drifting shards of light. "Go home," Lila said. "We have a meeting tomorrow. Don't be 17 minutes late." "I'll be 18 early," Edward replied. "The first time I replaced Mr. Vance without feeling strange. Or on time, if that's what you prefer." "And smile a little," she added, stepping into the rain and jogging toward a waiting taxi. The door closed, her silhouette fading behind a film of water. Edward stood under the awning for a while, listening to the last drops patter against the umbrella. Upstairs, the yellow drawing still hung in the middle of the board. Far out across the bay, the lighthouse blinked its steady rhythm, reminding him that some shelters aren't meant for staying, only for learning how to breathe before moving on. He folded the umbrella and stepped back into the elevator. Inside him, the thunder had stopped. Only silence remained, the kind that no longer frightened him, because someone had already seen him, not the CEO. And in that silence, one small promise echoed. Tomorrow, on time, and smiling. Morning light slipped through the frosted glass of the 42nd floor. Edward arrived earlier than usual. A new routine had quietly taken root over the past few weeks. Make coffee, review schedules, and then, without fail, watch Lila walk in with Ellie laughing brightly beside her, a bag of pastries swinging in her hand. Sometimes the little girl would leave a new drawing on his desk. Mr. Edward smiled today. Those small details made him want to work, to live, in an ordinary way again. But this morning his smile vanished before it began. The glass doors opened. Serena, the woman who had walked out of his life on a rainy night 3 years ago, was standing there, radiant, composed, and unmistakably deliberate. Maya froze at the reception desk. Edward looked up, surprise flickering only briefly before his face settled into calm. "Serena, I came to talk." "There's nothing to talk about." But she didn't leave. Serena stepped closer, her voice trembling, tears placed perfectly where they'd be seen. "I'm sorry, Edward. I was foolish. I was scared of the size of your shadow, of loving a man who didn't know how to be weak. But now I see. I miss you." He stood still for a moment. "I'm not the man you left. And what you miss is only the version of me you invented." His voice wasn't loud, but it was harder than steel. Serena understood. She could no longer touch him, yet his eyes, tired, deep, still held the faintest crack, and that was where she began. That afternoon, Lila ran into them in the hallway. Serena was speaking, voice wavering, her hand lightly touching Edward's arm. From a distance, it looked like reconciliation. When Serena noticed Lila's reflection in the glass, she turned with a polite, knowing smile. "Oh, the assistant. Hello. Edward and I were just reminiscing. Some relationships, even when they end, deserve respect. Thank you for taking care of him for me." Lila paused, then replied quietly, "I'm just doing my job." Serena tilted her head, eyes soft but edged. "Good women always know their place. I hope you do too." Edward started to speak, but Lila had already bowed slightly and walked away. As the elevator doors closed, her heart tightened, not from jealousy, but from the sting of being misplaced. The next afternoon, social media exploded. An anonymous account posted photos of Edward and Serena in the company lobby, captioned, "Power couple Vance Hale reunites after 3 years apart." Attached were screenshots of suggestive messages. "I still haven't forgotten you. Tonight, same place?" The signature read EV. Real enough for the world to believe. At the same time, a gossip blog released another piece. Insider claims Serena forgives the woman who came between her and Edward. The woman is a temporary employee, a single mother, who received financial assistance from the CEO. The article was spliced with cleverly edited images, Lila's emergency fund file, the company's transfer receipts, and photos of Edward helping her outside the hospital the previous week. Underneath, thousands of comments poured in. "Gold digger, well played." "Shameless." "Every CEO's got his special employee." Maya rushed into Edward's office, face pale. The news is spreading fast. Reporters are downstairs. Someone even took photos of Ellie. Edward's grip tightened around his phone. His voice turned to ice. "Get them out. Call legal. Trace the leak." "And Lila? I'll handle her." Night. Lila sat motionless in her small apartment. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Old friends, co-workers, even neighbors. "Are you the woman from that article? Don't think having a kid makes you untouchable." Ellie ran over, eyes wide and confused. "Mom, why do people say Mr. Edward is bad?" "I told them he's not, but they laughed." Lila said nothing. She just pulled her daughter close, holding her tighter than before. She had never known the world outside could be this cruel. And somewhere high above, Serena reread the article, her lips curling just enough into a smile. The next morning, everything fell apart. Ellie's school called first. "Ms. Brooks, we're sorry, but we recommend Ellie take a few weeks off, just until the noise dies down." Then came the landlord's email, termination of the lease. "Residents have reported that the media is lingering around the building. We have to protect the image of the property." At work, some colleagues started avoiding her. People who used to greet her each morning now only nodded awkwardly. Some eyes held pity, others, curiosity. That afternoon, as she stepped out of the copy room, Serena walked by, elegant as always, voice soft as wind. "Rough, isn't it? Reporters can be so cruel, but things will settle once Edward figures out what's real affection and what's just pity." Lila didn't answer, but when Serena's heels faded down the hall, her eyes filled, not with hurt, but with exhaustion. That night, Ellie sat at her small desk, adding more yellow to her drawing of Mr. Edward smiling. "I'm drawing more sunshine," she said, "so he won't be sad." Lila watched, her hand trembling faintly. She knew then she had to leave before her daughter got hurt any more than this. She printed her resignation letter and folded it neatly. Then she called Aunt Helen, the woman who often watched Ellie. "Auntie, I need to leave the city for a while. Could Ellie stay with you for a few days?" On the other end, the woman's voice was worried. "She still smiles, but her eyes look sad, Lila. You need to do something." "I know," Lila whispered. She had thought she was strong enough to endure anything, but this time she couldn't save herself. Edward returned to the office late that night. The building was quiet, the lights casting a warm glow over Ellie's crayon drawing. On his desk lay a white envelope, his name written in small, tidy handwriting. He opened it. Inside were her resignation papers and a handwritten note. "I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly, but this time, I can't save myself if I stay. Thank you for showing me that not everyone is as cold as they think. Lila." Edward stood frozen, the paper trembling in his hands. He looked around. The glass of water she'd poured him still sat where it always did, half full. Ellie's sun drawing still hung on the board, slightly tilted, as if waiting for a breeze. He pulled out his phone and called her number, only to hear the hollow tone of an automated voice. "The subscriber you have dialed is not available." Maya rushed in, breathless. "Mr. Vance, she's gone." HR said Ms. Brooks submitted her resignation this afternoon and left the city at 6. "Where?" "No one knows. She just said, 'North. Family up there.'" Edward didn't speak. He set a hand on the desk, where the paper still held the faint imprint of her warmth. He remembered that night in the rain, when a woman had knelt beside him, not out of pity, but because she refused to let someone die alone. And now that same woman had left, leaving him in a room filled with light that somehow felt completely empty. The storm around Vance Global came without thunder. Online, the name Lila Brooks appeared in hundreds of articles, paired with cheap words like love payment, gold digger, the other woman. On the 42nd floor, Edward sat alone. In front of him lay Ellie's sun drawing, its corners curled slightly, yet the yellow still blazed as bright as the first day. He could not stay silent any longer. The next morning, Edward stepped onto the press conference stage before a sea of cameras. No PR team, no moderator, no scripted statement. Only him, the CEO of Vance Global, standing straight under white lights, eyes steady. "Thank you for coming," he began, voice hoarse but firm. "I don't have a prepared speech. I only have the truth." Behind him, the giant screen lit up with evidence. System logs proving that the payment for Lila's mother came from the Employee Welfare Fund with full board approval. Metadata analysis revealed that the EV messages were digitally altered. Security footage showing Serena Hale, his ex-wife, accessing internal files before the rumors spread. Edward turned toward the press. "Serena was part of my past, but today I want to make this clear. There was no reunion, no affair, no third person. Only a woman who was hurt because of her own kindness." His voice caught on the last line, but his gaze never fell. A reporter called out, "Mr. Vance, do you intend to press charges?" "Yes," Edward said simply, "but before that, I owe an apology." He took a breath, his hand tightening on the microphone. "She was the only one who saved me from myself on the night I collapsed between liquor and stage lights. She didn't want another life lost to alcohol, and I left her to face it alone." The room went silent. Not a single shutter clicked. "I can't undo what's happened, but I can walk toward the light, wherever she is now. And if anyone asks, I don't need my reputation. I just need the chance to apologize, with everything real in me." He bowed and stepped down from the podium, walking through a rainstorm of flashing lights that looked almost like daylight breaking. By afternoon, the tide had turned. Major outlets deleted the old headlines and replaced them with, "CEO Edward Vance publicly apologizes to assistant. The truth behind the gold digger scandal." A man who chooses responsibility over power. Serena read those words, her hand tightening around her wine glass. She had lost, not just in the eyes of the public, but in the gaze of the man who once loved her. Meanwhile, Edward left the office carrying only one thing, Ellie's drawing of a lighthouse, the one she'd given him, "So you won't lose your way." Now he knew exactly where to go. Autumn rain poured endlessly along the highway. Edward's black car cut through rows of low houses and waterlogged fields, heading toward Port Willow, a quiet seaside town Lila once mentioned when speaking of her childhood. Dusk had fallen by the time he stopped. The ocean wind whipped through the air, tasting of salt and carrying the cry of distant gulls. At the end of the road, an old lighthouse rose, tall, white, impulsing light in steady intervals, just like in Ellie's drawing. He stepped out, holding the framed picture under his arm. Sand clung to his shoes and wind tugged at his tie. Every step felt heavy, weighted with all the words he had never said. Before the wooden railing overlooking the sea, Lila stood there. Her gray coat fluttered in the wind, hair wild around her face. She turned and froze when she saw him. "Edward, I'm sorry," he said before she could ask. "I didn't come to bring you back. I came to say what I should have said long ago." "You don't have to." "I do," he interrupted, voice trembling yet firm. "For the first time in years, I'm not speaking as a CEO. I'm speaking as a man who's lost too much to silence." He stepped closer, eyes fixed on hers. "This time, I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking to walk toward you, toward what's real." Lila bit her lip. Tears fell no matter how hard she tried to hold them back. "You don't know how terrified I was, watching my child be shamed, questioned, and asked who her mother really is." "I know," Edward said softly, "and I promise, you and Ellie will never have to be afraid again." They stood there between sea and wind, saying nothing more. The lighthouse beams swept over them again and again, washing away the blur inside their hearts. From afar came a small voice, Ellie's, calling out as she ran toward them, a little kite in her hand. "Mr. Edward, I told Mommy you'd come." She grabbed his hand, then pulled her mother's hand into it, eyes bright. Now everyone can smile, right? The two adults looked at each other and laughed through their tears. Edward knelt to hug the little girl, his other hand tightening around Lila's. And for the first time in years, he could finally breathe. Truly breathe. By late afternoon, the sun sank into the sea, leaving a trail of gold across the water. Edward, Lila, and Ellie walked together along the sand. Behind them, the lighthouse kept flashing. Not to call someone home, but to guide those still on their way. I used to think light was something you had to fight for, Edward said quietly. But it turns out you just have to look up. It's already here. Lila smiled. Sometimes the light isn't at the end of the road. It's the person walking beside you. She squeezed his hand tighter. Ahead of them, Ellie shouted through the wind, "Mr. Edward, look! A rainbow!" He followed her finger. It was only sunset reflected on the waves, but he believed her. Because inside him, something really had changed color. 1 year later, Port Haven had shifted seasons again. Its air lighter, its wind softer, carrying no more weight. Vance Global was still a giant corporation, but people whispered that its atmosphere had changed. Less tension, more laughter, just like its leader. Edward Vance no longer arrived before dawn or left past midnight. Now he came at 8 and left at 4:30. Sometimes he could be seen at a small cafe by the bay, reading a book with a brown-haired girl and a woman in a gray coat. No one dared approach, but everyone smiled. October 12th, 1 year since the scandal that once shook the city, the Port Haven Cultural Center blazed with light. The launch ceremony for the Ellie Foundation, a fund supporting children and single parents affected by accidents, alcohol, and emotional trauma, was filled with reporters and guests. The foundation's name came from Ellie's own crayon drawing, a lighthouse shining in a golden sky. When the stage lights centered on him, Edward stepped up to the podium. No longer the proud CEO he once was, he stood in a gray suit, tie loosened, voice calm, deep and warm. A year ago, I thought success was measured in numbers. I stood under lights like these, but inside I was darkness. And then someone handed me a glass of water, saying, "Don't let anyone else die because of alcohol." Another drew me a picture of the sun to remind me that smiling is also a way to live. He paused, looking toward the first row, where Lila and Ellie sat. Lila smiled, not the hesitant smile of the past, but a true, steady light. Ellie waved, her little lighthouse bracelet gleaming under the stage lights. One glass of water, one look, enough to change a life, and two people changed mine. The room fell silent. No one clapped at first, because some moments don't need sound, only hearts beating in time. After the ceremony, reporters swarmed forward for interviews. Edward simply said, "Don't write about me. Write about people who choose kindness every day. They deserve the story more." He bent down, took Ellie's hand, and reached for Lila's. Together, they stepped out into the crimson dusk that wrapped around Port Haven Bay. Ellie ran ahead, shouting, "Mom! Mr. Edward, look! A rainbow!" This time the arc was real, stretching over the sea, touching the white lighthouse in the distance. Edward smiled, turning to Lila. "You once said light isn't at the end of the road. It's the person beside you." "And you still remember," she teased. "Not just remember," he said softly. "I'm living in it." On the sand, they walked side by side, hand in hand. Beyond the horizon, the lighthouse blinked in rhythm, no longer a symbol of being lost, but of finding home. And that's where the story ended. Not with a kiss, not with applause, but with a small family, a foundation named after a child, and a light they had found together. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about smiling when you remember and still choosing to love.